Is Sasha around? I mean, she's here. I don't know. Fair enough.
Yeah, guess we'll just hang out a bit. I missed
like
last time, so I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, I was at the last one. I wasn't at either the previous ones. I don't know how many there were. There was at least one before that, but I thought it was pretty fun. Yeah, there's at least 5 people that are RSVP'd yes. So, or sorry, 8 people, even more.
Well, maybe we're just looking for the leader here, and I think she might be having a bit of a trouble.
That could be.
Hey, since we're talking about non-things, how do I get this Hangout toolbox to like go away?
Is it the pop-up window or is it the actual toolbar?
It's the side thing. Oh, I just
the side thing.
Out. There we go. I got it. It's that silly stuff that you click the thing on the left to turn off the thing on the right.
Oh, gotcha. Well, do you have the chat thing on? There's that too, the chat pane.
That might be more useful.
Yeah, at least last time there were a couple of things that people were like, I'm installing like this, or like talking about this, package. Here's a link. And I was like, oh, cool. Now I can just,
Excellent.
or whatever.
Since I've got a Kinesis keyboard, I better click the mute on first.
Oh, that's a good point. I'm using an Ergodox with green, cherry green keys.
Oh, how do you like it?
I like it a lot. There's a couple downsides. I think some of the positioning of the thumb keys is suboptimal. Because like when you put your hand, at least when I put my hand on it, I don't have small hands. My thumb, I don't know how much of this you can see.
No, I can.
So there's the basically the 3 columns for your thumb. My thumb naturally sits innermost, which is
right. That's what I was kind of wondering, because when I first saw it, it's like, it seems like it needs to be tucked in a little bit more.
Yeah, I think so. And you can't move your hand in. Like the index finger goes on this row, but you can't put your index finger here because there's only 2 keys in this column.
Oh.
Because I was like, well, maybe I'll just, use it differently than everyone else. But, you don't have the same number of keys, so it'd be really weird, as opposed to just kind of weird.
Right. Yeah, I figured before I invested into spending weeks soldering, I wanted to get more feedback from others.
Yeah. I mean, I really like it. Overall, it's the best one I've used, I think. Although, to be fair, when you build something yourself, it's always preferred.
You're going to love it no matter what.
But, I mean, I did use a Kinesis for a little while and didn't like it as much. I think some of that was the bowl, like the bowl part of the...
Sure, that does take a while to get used to, for sure.
But
not to mention just trying to relearn all the finger memory for all the Emacs shortcuts,
Yeah. Also, I don't use QWERTY, so that's even more fun. But that, at least for me, that wasn't too bad. Oh, looks like someone else joined us. Hi, Ian. No?
Yeah.
All right, well. Just unmute?
No, I don't know, maybe. Huh.
But yeah, also the Kinesis has what? The brown keys? The MX Browns, I think?
Yeah, it does.
I found them to be a little bit mushy.
Yeah, they are. They're not quite as good, and I don't care for the function keys, which are even mushier.
Oh yeah, like they're the chiclet. Like what? Why?
Yeah,
like,
I don't know. I did get used to the bowl kind of thing, and I actually prefer it because everything's a little closer. Once you get used to it, it's nice. You don't have to reach quite as far.
That could be.
So yeah, these won't be my last keyboards. But
yeah.
But yeah, I'm also looking at the Keyboard I/O. Have you seen that group?
Maybe let me look them up. Are they the butterfly one?
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been on their mailing list for a little while.
Yeah, so have I, and yeah, like I guess you do call it the butterfly one. So
I think some of the iterations were more and less butterfly.
Yeah, so I'm definitely intrigued on that one as well. Yeah,
No.
I think Emacs weenies talk about keyboards more than as a second topic, right under less than Emacs.
There's a mechanical keyboard subreddit that, oh my gosh, there are so many things to talk about.
Yeah. Someday I'll feel the need to upgrade to a keyboard. Yeah, it's probably one where you'll handcraft it yourself.
Yeah, I have another Ergodox coming in for work.
That is the rub. Is I'd have to have 3, right? Because once you go that route, you can't use the laptop keyboards anymore. And if you go into the office, you're going over here, you got to have the keyboards everywhere. You're just carrying them around.
Yeah. I mean, at least I guess a good thing about the Ergodox as compared to the Kinesis is like it's not that because it's in 2 pieces. It's not giant. True. I mean, there's obviously 2 of these, but like you know, you can stack them and like it's not that much space.
Yeah, of course you used 20 gauge steel for the covers, right?
It's aluminum actually. The ones I have, yeah. I mean, you don't have to get the aluminum. I was just like, of course I'm gonna. It's so cool.
Of course, of course. And you also have to have big metal pipes coming out of the back end, you know, just for the coolness factor too, right? And then
I'd handcrafted USB cord. You know. Yeah, there some of the, and have you, there's a like some of the key like the actual keycaps. There are people that make like $100 for one keycap.
I was noticing on Massdrop just how many of those ones with potatoes on them and various things. Yeah.
And it just, I mean, you know, obviously to each their own. But it's just like that's a lot of money for one. But I mean, you know, to be fair, I spent $300 on this, so.
Right.
You know, no judgment certainly, but it is interesting.
Yes, and I guess the next question is, are you going to get a lighted version? Because that's the one thing I do miss is I'm often in the dark when I'm programming, and had to get a little light that I just set over the keyboard so I don't see it, but it illuminates the keyboard well enough that if I lose my place, I know where to go.
Interesting, because I find I don't ever want to look at the keyboard.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's the ideal, but like, especially when it's not marked, you kind of can't.
Right. Yeah. My problem is I can never find the right function key in the dark on the cases because it's squishy and far away.
Gotcha. Oh, are the like the F12 or whatever? Those keys.
Yeah, because you know I started binding a lot of the custom stuff that I don't use very often to F9.
Okay.
And so like pulling up Magic, you know, I hit F9 kind of.
Yeah, that I could. I mean, I don't because I don't have function keys. There aren't enough keys, but like that I'm not like, no, you shouldn't do that. You should touch type because if it is so rare, it's like whatever, you know.
Yeah, it happens like, every now and then, so it's perfect to put on the function key and you just
exactly.
Want. But yeah, I can never find it in the dark because they're not marked otherwise. They're too small.
Oh yeah, and they're not really segmented, right? Like it's not like chunks of 4 where you can do it by feel. It's just like a long block of equally spaced.
Pretty much. Yeah, so I'm always hitting the wrong one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did have to get rid of RM-RF star off of the F10 function key so that I don't accidentally hit that one.
Yeah, you don't want that to misclick.
No, not really.
We have someone else new. Nerd Rage. Hi, can you hear us? There's also a chat. Either no, or
I think everyone's having tech issues today.
Yeah, it seems like. Hi, Sasha. Huh, I don't know.
Well, what have you been hacking on lately?
What have I been doing? Mostly at least on my own. I've been doing some Clojure or Clojure script, and I haven't actually bothered to set it up right with Emacs that I need to do because the tooling is actually really nice.
Isn't that
I
the
just
first thing we do? I mean, I needed to learn a new language. Well, the first thing I do is grab the Emacs, plugins.
yeah, but I don't know. I got it working, then it broke, and I just haven't gotten back to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, just some assorted like learning new Emacs keys.
Yeah, but so are you using the cider?
I that was what I had working and then broke, and I'm not sure what's going on with it now.
Yeah, because I got that working with also the foreclosure, the little question thing.
Oh, okay.
Bound that in, and boy, I gotta admit that was really working out well. I was like, went through all the tutorials and playing around with it, built up quite a bit of stuff. I have to admit that cider worked out quite well.
Cool. I'll give it another shot because you want everything in Emacs and just to work.
Exactly.
But actually, Ian, you mentioned you're installing JavaScript stuff. Are you? I do web dev stuff, but mostly on the back end. Are you doing Node, or are you doing kind of more mixed, like JavaScript, HTML stuff? Because I haven't found web mode to be really good at anything mixed, and that's kind of what I've used. If you don't mind typing a little bit of that answer.
That is the advantage of being able to talk.
Yeah. And if not, that's okay too. That's kind of a vague question. Okay.
Yeah, one of the things I've been wanting to tie in is Helm, and give that a run for its money.
I saw a couple presentations by the author, David Nolan,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just he presented it. I think the Clojure script and the Clojure New York Emacs meetups.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. He's like, oh, well, also you can just hook up directly up into the browser, and it'll just auto like update your code, and like it does this, and I was like, this is amazing. So I've started doing that, and it looks so cool, so like functional, so cool. I don't know, it just looks really powerful.
Yeah, I'm really quite intrigued, but I haven't had a chance to dive in yet. Yeah, maybe this weekend's project. Yeah, well, for my day job, I've suddenly been doing quite a bit of DevOps work, system
Okay.
administration, which I've been kind of shocked with. So I've been writing a lot of org mode, where all the org mode has all the commands to execute embedded in it. And so I've been having quite a bit of fun with that lately, just hacking. Because what I found is that bash scripts are okay until they get to be a little heavy. And so I've just been writing eLisp to do that part. So if you can kind of think of changing your shell scripts over to eLisp.
Interesting.
Well, one of them, like I was needing to go through and do the checksums for I think 40,000 RPMs that were being installed on various machines. So to get the checksums, they're all in the Yum makes these XML files, just big old hairy XML files where they embed all the checksums in there. And it's like, okay, what language am I going to use to parse the XML? And it's like, well, that's right. Emacs 23, I think, built that XML parsing into it. So it's like loaded up. Okay. Now we're going somewhere. So yeah, I parsed it all within, with a little bit of eLisp code, and created a nice little table, and went through and ran an SSH command out to all of the machines and pulled them in and did all the comparisons inside. And then once I had the perfect table that showed which RPM was doing what, then I just exported that table out and sent it on an email. So it was done.
That's really cool. I've done a little bit of Puppet, but that kind of sounds more like once you know what you want, you specify it with Puppet, but it's not really investigatory at all.
Yeah, and in my case, I don't know what I'm doing at the time, and doing some literate programming was kind of the right approach for me. Play around, see if it works first, and then come back in later.
Yeah, after the last Emacs Hangout, I started looking at a little bit of the literate programming for the people's init files, because that seemed kind of interesting.
Oh. Yeah, that's good. Flat, right? Yeah.
Hey, welcome.
Oh, it's only not very much.
But yeah, so I started looking at. I haven't done much with it, but just the starting to. It's kind of. I'm kind of not sure I'm buying, at least for init files that kind of aren't that complicated. At least mine isn't.
Yeah. I mean, mine is now horrendously evil, and it became that way over, the years and years I've been doing it. And what I found is, you'd get a little bit of code from somebody, you'd throw it in, and then you'd forget about it, and it just kind of built up cruft. And with the org mode, because I could keep organizing it, things wouldn't slip in without me remembering it or keeping it organized. So for me, it's been a real lifesaver. Yeah, just because it's so big now.
Gotcha.
I mean, once you start using so many different languages, I mean, it's like, okay, so for the next month I'll be doing Ruby. All right, well, I'll just include that Ruby org mode file, right, and just, render that in, and then when that project's over, I'll cancel that and then pull in the next one. I don't know,
that's cool.
It seems to be pretty useful for me.
Yeah, I feel like it's the kind of thing that you need to use it for a little while to really see the benefit of it.
Oh, sure.
It's the pain it's solving is not it's broken right now, but no, it'll make sense later when it normally wouldn't, and that's it's hard to grok until you do it.
Yeah, true. Yeah, but once you get kind of addicted to it, it's really kind of this drug. Pretty much everything now, it's like, oh, even my comments are now longer just because everything is now this brain dump, a stream of consciousness for everything. Now, it's probably I've gone too far and I need to pull it back, but,
Yeah.
So, Nerd Rage, welcome. What have you been up to?
Feel free to unmute if you want. or not. Let's see. I guess one thing we kind of did at the last Hangout that I thought was pretty cool was kind of just things you've learned about Emacs, or new things you kind of found out recently. And I guess one thing I recently kind of started learning was about org mode. That there's kind of this big difference between headlines and like other kinds of lists. Let me, let me screen share just to kind of show some of that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Let me remember how to do that.
Oh, good question.
It was one of the random buttons. There we go.
The green one.
Yeah, on the left. All right. So can you see Emacs? Open up a new one. So this is how I started with org mode. With just like everything is a headline.
Sure.
And I would have nested lines.
Right.
Unindent, whatever. Whatever. Which is fine, but at least some of the downsides is that so there are some features that can't be used in these. For example, checkboxes. That if you can do to-dos with org to-do, which is by default bound to Control-C, Control-T, which are great. They're super useful. But if you use the dash lists, you can use checkboxes, which allow you to like kind of make an actual list, like a shopping list. And sorry, to insert a checkbox. Control X, Control. Nope. What did I do? Sorry. Yeah, Control C, Control X, Control B. If I type it right, toggles the checkbox. If you give it the prefix argument, so Control U, Control C, Control X, Control B, it inserts the checkbox. But you can only do these on like the dashed or plus lists. I think they call them plain lists. That, to be honest, I haven't quite really understood all the differences when you'd want to use one, when you'd want to use the other. But you can do.
Okay, I think they're pretty much the same. Whether you use the asterisk or whether you use a dash, I think they're the same thing. It's just whether you have initial spaces or not. And so a header, okay, so pop up to that headline. Let's try something here for a minute.
Okay.
Okay, and insert a new line. Okay, and then go to the beginning of the line there.
This is the beginning line. I have something. I have org mode configured to kind of push things in a little bit. So
I see. Okay, so do 2 asterisks then. And a space. Oh, I see. Okay, so it's so it is the 2 asterisks as opposed to just indenting one.
Yeah, so it's 2 asterisks. Right, so right now this line just has 2 asterisks and a space.
Okay. Just how you're showing it.
Yeah, let me see if I can find that.
Because it's really just no, you don't need it.
All right. I find that more readable. Personally.
Oh, it definitely is, and I do the same. I do something similar. But like I said, if you put some spaces on the inside, so like, all right, now delete those 2 asterisks.
Okay.
And push tab to get in, and put a couple of spaces and an asterisk. Now this is that different kind of list, and this is the one that takes those sorts of things, the checkboxes.
That's true. Okay, so I guess that's a plain list also.
It is.
Not a headline.
Not a headline. Yeah. So it's not so much the asterisk; it's whether it has a space in front.
But interestingly, this line with a dash does not have a space in front. The first character is the dash.
Okay. Okay.
I guess it's probably just because if the line starts with an asterisk, it is a headline. Maybe anything else then is a plain list.
Yeah, good. I mean, once you get kind of in a particular habit, you don't look at anything else if something's working for you. So yeah,
Yeah.
I still use the dashes for all lists and asterisks for headers.
Yeah, I guess the way I was using org mode before, and kind of still how it is more intuitive to me now, but I'm trying to get away from it, is just like everything's a headline, because why not? I guess the reason why not is so you can use check marks.
Yes, and if you do embedded check marks, you can start, it can start getting, it gets interesting in that regard.
Oh, with the
now do a checkbox there.
Yeah, so like when you marks the parent, if the parent has all subchildren. Yeah, so I guess just to demo that, if I'm making a pizza that for some reason is only pepperoni and sauce, so if you mark one of the subchildren as done, or as you cross out the check mark, the pizza just changed to a dash. And you mark with Control-C, Control-C, and when you mark the second one in that sublist, it says, okay, well, all the children are done, so I'm going to mark pizza's done, which that is pretty neat.
That is, and I think you can hit Tab right there and collapse the two sub-things just like a regular header anyway.
Yeah.
It does become a little ambiguous as to where to use one or the other.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I'm not entirely sure why there's a difference, because I guess I don't understand org mode well enough yet, but...
Does anybody?
That's kind of true. But yeah, so that I guess that's something that I learned recently about Emacs that I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is, definitely. So, Daniel, what you working on?
Well, I've been using Emacs for about a month, so I don't know too much, so I'll look up to you guys for guidance. And basically what I work on is just little Python scripts here and there, just to learn Python more and more. That's what I'm doing in my spare time.
Cool. So how are you finding Emacs? Are you finding it useful for what you're doing with it? Anything annoying? I mean, if we can definitely help troubleshoot, or if you want to do something that don't know, ask us.
All right. So what I've seen so far with Emacs, I love everything about it so far. But the thing I have so far is I see a lot of people customizing, like using eList. Am I saying it right? Emacs list, or I'm not sure. But what I want to know is how exactly do I customize it? Like, where do I start? Because I know there's certain packages and you can customize it to however you want. So I just want to get like a little, if you can point me to the right direction, then I'll just start digging up whatever I can find.
Well, I think I would, I'll plug Sasha's book that she's just put together. She's got this whole section on how to customize Emacs, starting with that. I think that's probably a pretty good start, because anything that you put in, I mean, you just start with a .emacs in your home directory, and any list of code you put in there gets executed first. So you can just kind of go to town that way, and that's how we used to do it. Now, there's been some configuration, like check marks, and where you can kind of customize certain things without getting into the Lisp code. I think most of us, after a while, start to do things in Lisp just because it's maybe fun. Right? But you can get away with quite a bit without ever writing any Lisp code.
I just threw a couple links into the chat. If you see that pane on the right, if not, you enable it on the left by clicking on like the blue note. I put in 2 links. One to some of the GNU documentation for Emacs about what an init file is. Are you familiar with that? The concept.
from my understanding, is that Emacs loads all the settings that you have in there. Is that do I have it right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a configuration file.
Yeah.
It's because Emacs is old. There's a bunch of ways of doing it. The traditional way is you just have in your home directory, so like your tilde directory on like a Unix system, or I think your user directory on Windows. I'm not sure. You just have like just one file, and that's where all your customizations go. Like it'll be like traditionally a .emacs. Apparently, Emacs will also look for .emacs.el for Emacs Lisp in that same directory. But a lot of people, especially for version controlling, are moving to this other way of doing it. That is basically you have a whole directory for your Emacs configuration, which is .emacs.d. And so that way what you can do is you can version control that entire directory. Because normally if you try to version control your tilde directory, it's there's other stuff there. So you just make one folder just for Emacs, and Emacs automatically looks inside there for an init.el, which if you open up the first link, oh sorry Sasha, that's the reason I put the two things there. It wasn't I guess just for reference. Anyway, so if so like that's where you edit these files. And then the second link is, I think, what Howard was talking about, Sasha's how to customize Emacs. I think that was the one that you were talking about, Howard. So I just linked that. That's kind of a basic, here's how you customize things in Emacs, which is,
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. As long as I have something to go off, that'll be helpful.
But yeah, really, a lot of Emacs is just like, finding a thing you want. Like, like here's a small, like, someone's like, oh, I like that, that small thing they're doing. Just throwing it in. One of the really powerful things is you don't have to restart Emacs to kind of how things work. If you want, let me demo this because I think it'll be useful. Let me screen share again.
Yeah. And just one quick question.
Sure.
I heard you guys earlier about saying that you guys just copy certain settings from other people, just paste it in there and it gets messy. How do I, or you guys were talking about org mode? So I'm clueless. So I don't know.
Initialization is like 10,000 lines long. Oh, look who joined us.
Now I can finally hear people. Holy cow. I'm so embarrassed.
Hi, Sasha. We've been talking for so long, wondering where you were.
Oh my gosh. Talking to myself apparently. I have no idea what happened. Technical issues. I was so worried because no one was talking to me. I was like, oh no.
We just thought you weren't around.
Oh well, okay, that's really weird. But now that we're here.
Don't take it personally.
You know how many awkward silences I tried to fill with Emacs tips?
Oh. Yeah,
well,
sorry.
It's all funny now. This is okay. I was like, oh no, nobody wants to talk to me. Everyone's having technical issues, so I'm glad we cleared that up.
Excited. I need to record that part.
Okay, so the context we were going over was Daniel's somewhat new to Emacs. He's been using it for about a month. Daniel, just step in if I'm, at any time, but he's kind of new to customizing it. So that's why I linked the init file documentation and your how to customize Emacs.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, so actually, Zachary, do you want to share a couple of things that you want to customize Emacs, or has that already been hashed thoroughly in the wonderful section that I missed?
I mean, I was thinking about demoing something if that would be useful, and then I guess Daniel kind of had a question about org mode using it because we were talking about that before with an init file that Howard was taking.
All right, bring it on.
Yeah, Howard, you were explaining how kind of you use your org mode to manage your init file, which is kind of a, I don't want to say advanced feature, but I wouldn't recommend it as the first thing you do when you
definitely not. Definitely not. Don't worry about that. At some point, you'll want to learn org mode just because it's one of the most compelling features to use on Emacs. But I'll give you a link to when you're ready for that to take a look at org mode.
All right. Yeah.
Although I guess the Emacs starter kit makes it a little less intimidating. There are a lot of config settings in the Emacs starter kit, though, that might be surprising. So if you're starting out, you might not want to do that because then it makes it harder to ask for help.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, true enough.
But yeah, I guess just to circle back around, Daniel. So like, if once you find someone's I turned on this thing and I really like it, you can just put it in your init file and then you can just evaluate it without even needing to restart Emacs and just see how it works. Some things you do need to restart depending whatever, but there's a lot of stuff you can just configure in a run Emacs.
Okay.
Yeah, the only time you restart Emacs is if you totally screwed it up and you need to get rid of that.
Okay.
So Sasha, what were some of those amazing tips you were telling us when we couldn't hear you?
So I was talking about how I'm trying to learn more about abbreviations. I'm kind of just looking for opportunities to define ones. And somebody commented in my blog earlier to say that you can actually write a bit of code for your post command hook so that you can change your cursor color to tell you that there's an abbreviation that you can expand. So let's try the screen sharing thing again and kind of let's see if this actually works this time around. I'm going to share my screen. Now I'm going to check. Can people actually see my screen?
Yep, it's coming through.
Okay, so the idea here is let me go to the code for it. There's this post command hook, right? So you can run a function every time a command gets run, and you can use that to tell you if there are abbreviations. I've been working on defining simple abbreviations like turning BC into because, and so you'll notice here that when I type B, the cursor color is still white. If I type C, the cursor color changed to purple, which tells me that I can expand that, which I think is cool. And so you can use this as well in Emacs Lisp, for which there are many abbreviations specified, like when? Am I in Emacs Lisp mode? Let me make sure I'm in Emacs Lisp mode here. So when, for example, you can expand that, and when you expand it, it just adds parentheses around it. And the other reason why I was thinking about this was because Ian mentioned that he was setting things up for Angular, and there are a whole bunch of Angular snippets that I haven't dug into yet. But they might be worth looking into in terms of saving time and being able to remember all those quirky little things you have to type. Abbreviations. Did I lose everyone again?
No, at least I'm still here.
Okay. Now I'm super nervous about tech, right? Yeah, so that's what I've been trying to learn. It's kind of basic. Just figuring out what the expansions are out there and what I need, and getting used to that. Does anyone else use snippet or skeleton or even a brev?
I personally haven't done any of that at all. I just haven't. I don't know. Haven't gotten to it. What do you find it's really useful for?
I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it. It doesn't really make sense to use it for short stuff because you can just type that quickly and then it's fine. But I think, like, especially if you're the kind of person who likes adding comments at the end of your if braces, or in my case, for example, I have this thing. Let me show you. Book sketched. Okay, so I have this thing where I sketch books, right? And I have this org snippet now that I can expand. And as I type, for example, to sell is human, you can see here how parts of it are updating in response to what I'm typing. And as I type, as I press tab, I can go to the next field, and it also updates the rest of my tasks with the same field value. So I think that's kind of cool. And I want to be able to dig into the power of snippet for more of that sort of stuff.
Cool. Ian just mentioned in the chat he had problems getting snippet working. Ian, if you want to share what that was, or I don't know.
However, I missed that, Sasha. How do you get that coloring going? I like that approach, but I was having trouble with my computer here.
Yeah, so the coloring thing, the one that shows you whether you've got something exactly. I've got it from PC Man's Emacs list configuration. So on GitHub, and if you look on my blog and the post about snippet, you'll find someone has a link to that there. The way that it works is that there's a post command hook that that gets run after every single thing that happens in Emacs, and you can change the cursor if there's an abrev before point, or if snippet has a template before the at the point.
Okay, so it's only with a snippet. It's not with also like autocomplete or some of the other ones.
Well, autocomplete tends to show you stuff right away, so you don't really need a visual indicator as much. But for abrev, which I've also started trying to use, I added that as well here. So I dug into abrev and found out that you can use abrev before point to see whether like BC is something that I defined with a define global abrev, and it shows up here as something that can be expanded. And then I'm binding space to hippie expand, which expands using a whole bunch of different functions. So that's the keyboard shortcut I'm trying to burn into my brain. Although I'm not sure whether this is a good idea because space is used for a whole bunch of other things too.
I was gonna say, I don't know if I would choose that.
I figure if I want to insert multiple spaces, I'm either trying to indent, in which case you should use tab, or I can just use Control-U space if I actually want to insert 4 spaces instead. So
you got a point there.
Yeah, and now I'm trying this function over here that says, you know what, if I try to expand it and it doesn't have an expansion, then I probably meant to insert space anyway. So if I don't have anything, see, you can see here how it just, it does go space a little bit at a time. Anyway, so Ian has some more details on his snippet problems with JS refactor and the Yas errors. I think one of the biggest errors that people often come across with snippet is that snippet changed its naming conventions. It used to be things like Yas/expand, and now it's Yas-expand. So if you have code that refers, or if you have packages that refer to the old way of doing things, they have to be updated for the new way of doing things. So might be worth looking into.
And one thing I'll plug, I know I mentioned it last Hangout, is the Emacs Stack Exchange. That's still in beta, but it's really useful. I'll put a link in chat. That if you have questions, put them there. You can find answers, get answers, all that stuff.
And the Emacs community on Quora sometimes comes. A lot of the Emacs questions in Quora are, can you use Emacs? Which is better, Emacs or Vim? And we all know where we come down on that side of the question. But sometimes there are interesting questions along the lines of how you get better at Emacs. It's kind of the more meta stuff. The technical stuff goes on Stack Exchange, and the meta stuff sometimes goes on Quora.
Yeah, that's good because yeah, Stack Exchange is definitely not for the like what package is better or like is there a better way to do this that are really important questions, but it's just not for that site.
Yeah. Hello. Hi. Hi, Grant. Welcome. Thanks, Howard, for dropping by.
My pleasure. Thanks again. Didn't want to interrupt.
Let's see. What else did I kind of brain dump in my awkward attempt to fill up the time and the silence while I was talking to myself? Web mode, by the way, is a lot more fun than HTML mode, Ian. If you're kind of getting started again with HTML, and also I've started to really like skewer mode as a way to interactively run JavaScript. While you're working in Emacs, you just hit Control-C, Control-K, and it runs that in the browser. So it kind of speeds up the development a little bit. And JS2 mode is nicer than JavaScript mode. Yeah. I like Helm. Opinion is divided on it, but you can actually configure it so that it feels more responsive at least. It's still a little bit it's a fair bit slower than I do, I suppose, if you compare both getting the options and simply wading through all the options versus kind of just the quick quick thing. But I like Helm.
I like Helm too. The Helm's a little bit more of a change to default Emacs, even in terms of what you're doing. Like you're not always hitting enter for completion or for like folder selection. So there's more getting used to. Helm, I do modes, at least in my experience, it's a little bit more of like a just drop it in and it'll work like you did before, but better.
I'm starting to slowly get the hang of Helm swoop now. So Ace iSearch is starting to become part of the way that I understand how to just jump around.
I haven't seen those. Could you demo them?
For sure. Okay, so let me screen share here and come back to my Emacs. So what Helm Swoop does is if you're searching for something, this is a little complicated because I'm demonstrating Ace iSearch and Helm Swoop and of course regular iSearch. So let me do the Ace part first of Ace iSearch. If you Control S and then I search for a single character, let's say A, it will show me all the words on the current screen that start with the letter A, which I just typed. And then I can press E, for example, to jump to this particular instance of that letter A that starts a word. And so it's a quick way to jump around. That's Ace Jump. Ace iSearch defines certain thresholds at which it will use different behaviors. If you search for a single character, it will Ace Jump to it. If you search for a string that is less than 5 characters, it will just use the regular iSearch behavior. But if you search for if you search for 6 or more characters, it does Helm Swoop. This is Helm Swoop. So it's like iSearch, and that you can go through things quickly, but it's also like Occur in that you get the overview of all the matches in your buffer. You can apparently press Meta I to apply this search across all the buffers. I have never tried this, but I suppose it's really useful. And Control-C, Control-E gives you an editable buffer, so you can make a lot of changes, and it'll get applied all over your buffer. Again, a feature that I have not practically used because it looks like I could shoot my foot with it, but it looks really powerful, and I should use it someday. So that's Helm Swoop, and you can use that even without using Helm.
Yeah, that's really cool. One thing that I like is it shows you how many matches are in the buffer. Because sometimes, I just want to know that. you know, like when you're eye searching, it was just like, you know, am I going to have to go through a bunch more, or is there only like a couple more to go through? So that seems really awesome.
Oh yeah, I guess you don't have that in the regular iSearch. Okay, if you're in iSearch and you have Helm Swoop installed, and you don't have iSearch installed, or you're searching for something short, you can press Meta I to take your iSearch, your current iSearch, and put that into Helm Swoop. So that's a kind of a quick shortcut in case you change your mind and you want to see everything. And it has slide numbers too.
Sasha,
Hi,
maybe you could
Cameron.
tell.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say maybe you could tell us a little bit for the folks that started with I do and are not capable of learning anything new. Why you might switch to Helm or spend more than 5 minutes learning about it.
Well, I started off with I do as well, actually. So I got really used to pressing Control S and Control R to just cycle through things and arrow keys and what. I think I tried using Helm out of sheer stubbornness. I kind of just wanted to see what it was about. And in the beginning, I found it a lot less. It was a bit awkward trying to do the kinds of things that I was already easily doing in I do. You know, creating a new file or going to a different drive. But they seem to have cleaned that up a fair bit. So now it works fine for me. But what I like about it would be, well, it's got a lot of different modules, so you can add different sources for completion instead of just being limited to whatever the default is. And I don't know, it's just something about the way that I interact with it. That it's people, I guess, with Flex I do and with I do vertical mode will probably have a very similar experience. But since I didn't have I do vertical mode set up and Flex I do set up before, I just got used to the way Helm did it.
Gotcha. That's good to know. So I have Flex I do in vertical mode set up. So good to know. Thank you.
Apparently, there are all sorts of things that you can do as a more advanced user of Helm, such as running different operations and multiple selections in your buffer. But I am not advanced enough a Helm user in order to really take advantage of that.
Good to know. So I'm curious how you and everybody else are doing with time management as you decide whether or not to invest in and pursue new packages, techniques, workflows, explorations, research, so that you continue to explore your creativity, yet still do important things like wash the dishes, take the garbage out, pay the bills. How do you folks deal with that? How do you prioritize? Come on, don't everybody start talking at once.
Well, one thing that I do that I think is really useful is I live in New York, so I ride the subway to work. On the subway, I used a spaced repetition app to learn new commands. And spaced repetition is basically this way of using flashcards in a way that it's smart about which ones it presents to you. But basically, so I'll be like, oh, that's a thing I want to learn. Like I was like, oh, there's a command to join two lines together, rather than moving to the end of the line and then like deleting a new line or whatever. There's one command to do it. So just kind of like, being like, I don't have to memorize it all right now, just like adding it to this list and like I get to it. That's obviously one of the smallest things you can do, in your list of questions of, packages or configurations or settings or whatever. But just, I think it's really useful to like just have this list that you're learning as you go.
Nice.
I tend to take the approach that it's a lot more fun to figure out how to automate something than to do it manually and repetitively. So my threshold for automating things is very low, and that leads me to learn about all sorts of things that you can do with Emacs. So that's kind of like, if it's obvious that I can probably solve this better with a little bit of Emacs list or a keyboard macro, then great. I pick up a lot of ideas on how to use Emacs more effectively from other people's blog posts or screencasts or conversations, which is how I end up trying to get the hang of multiple cursors mode and smart parents, both of which do require kind of that investment of thinking differently. And then aside from that, I just treat this is like hobby time. It's what I do for fun. And so there's regular work, and then when I get really tired of the thing that I'm working on, I will just go do an Emacsy thing to smoothen out my config or organize my org files or whatever, while making sure, of course, that the dishes get done and the trash is covered and all that stuff.
Nice. Nice. So I subscribe to the Stack Overflow feed for or Stack Exchange for Emacs, the org mailing list, the Emacs devel list. So I still read those, and that's helpful and valuable, and there's always good new stuff coming out. But I have to make a concerted effort not to dig into things and investigate things, because there's just too much creativity to explore. There's too much fun to be had. It's the last config file rewrite I did. I think I stopped it at like. I stopped keeping track at like 400 hours because I logged all the time.
That's
and
awesome.
I said, yeah, and I said, okay, I really got to get serious and just move on to other things. And I limit now. So my config file, I'll share it. You know, I've got all my experimental stuff private right on Bitbucket, but then on GitHub I publish it. And I try to only make changes every 30 days or so, just to have it be stable and people download it, like it'll be usable and stuff. And that seems to be an okay plan. And you know, it was a lot of fun, right? During the highly productive, explorative stage, and you know, trying out every package possible. And I wonder if you were to draw a graphic of the evolution of an Emacs user, I'd be curious to see the kind of the stages they go through and various config files and all that kind of stuff, because it's I bet there's a lot of overlap, you know. And until this Hangout, right, there wasn't not a ton of discussion on Emacs on a daily basis, believe it or not, other than my coworkers just constantly affectionately ridiculing me, which I love. So.
That's kind of the reason why I want to have these Hangouts, right? Because a lot of people are the only Emacs geeks in their offices or even cities, maybe. So it's kind of nice to just bump into other people and realize, hey, other people do cool stuff. Struggle with the same yak shaving instincts.
I did buy 2 of the Emacs mugs from the FSF, and I put them in the office at work. So. And I don't use them, right? I just put them there to just spread the word, and then I told all the Vim users that if they drink any fluids, any water from the cup that they're imbibing from, you know, the philosophical school of Emacs, and then they immediately said they'll never use the cups, and I said, well, maybe someday, and they just laughed.
Oh, we're getting a lot of people switching over, right? Because of evil mode and all the cool things that people are building into Emacs these days too.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see kind of it's not convergence, but to see, like, you know, in Vim, I think it's called, oh gosh, it's not ace jump mode in Vim. It's like easy motion, right? So ace jump mode. I don't know if they cloned it, but ace jump mode is the same as easy motion. So there's kind of this creative convergence happening where stuff shows up in Vim, and then it will show up in Emacs soon. And if it shows up in Emacs, it'll show up in Vim soon. So all these hyper productivity things are just kind of spreading like wildfire to some degree. I say that, you know, with an appropriate context, but that's pretty cool. My buddy who uses Vim, whenever he talks about new stuff, we can just, you know, see what's the equivalent for our editor, and, you know, lot of fun kind of collaborative creation stuff, which is always exciting.
It's kind of funny watching Vim also create all these plugins and ways of doing things. My husband is a Vim user, and we were watching one of the Vim casts together about indentation, I think, customizing tabs and whatever. And there's tiny segment in that video where it talked about being able to set your tab size and your shift width and all those other things at the same time using Vim script. And when it flashed the code on the screen, I just started laughing because the customization of it, the actual writing of these plugins was a lot more complex than I would have expected from say Emacs Lisp code. So it's kind of interesting seeing Vim kind of move away from its I'm small, I'm just a text editor, I will do this one thing really well, to more of maybe focusing on being a modal editor that has good composition and keystrokes, but not so much necessarily just being minimal.
Yeah, definitely. Have you guys all read the it's not a blog post, but it's kind of a post by Bill Joy, you know, who implemented the original Vi, and he's kind of talking about, you know, those guys over on the East Coast, they have fiber and these big machines, and they can build Emacs, but you got to understand we're on little, you know, small connections, little tiny screens, and, you know, Vi has to be really fast. It's different, and it's like, it wasn't even apology or informational. It was more like lamenting, like, you know, like how back, you know, how hard things were. But yeah, I mean, Vim's definitely growing. I always kind of wonder if Vim's just going to reach some kind of inflection point where like Python becomes the language for it, because it's I don't know. I heard some rumblings that you could already talk to Vim using Python, and it's like, I think that would just be an explosion of new packages, new features, all that kind of stuff, because so many people use it.
I'd actually like to see that. I mean, if Vim could have this kind of customizing, you know, self-modifying community that Emacs has, then more people will write plugins for it, and then of course we can borrow more ideas as well for Emacs. So I'd actually like to see that kind of culture take root.
Yeah, that'd be very cool. You know, as I downloaded, I set up a new Windows box, and I went to download outdated idea that, oh, it's this lightweight download, all kind of stuff, and how was it, like 30 meg or something? I mean, it's not measured in kilobytes. I mean, it could be, but it's no longer a tiny little app. I mean, Vim's its own beast, and I think the opportunity certainly exists. Yeah. So speaking of Windows, I had the opportunity to start developing on a Windows box again, and I went through the painful period of my Emacs config, quote unquote, settling in on Windows. Settling into the period of time where it adjusts to the new platform, and you know, of course, the problem's not Emacs, it's me, right? It's getting used to stuff and everything, and tiny little fixes. There's tiny little fixes, but we say software has to settle in. And I was quite pleased by this, and again, I shared it with my coworkers, who immediately, you know, congratulated me and said the 5 other Emacs users on Windows are really going to appreciate, you know, your efforts, Grant. And I said there's more than 5. There's more than 5. There's Ben, Sasha, there's John Kitchen, and then I know there's at least 2 Stack Exchange people. And well, the reason I bring this up is on OS 10, you know, on the Mac box, there's this really super program called Carabiner. It used to be called Keyremap for MacBook. And the purpose of this program, specifically for Emacs users, is what it'll do is if you set it up and you click one config setting, it'll leave your enter key just its normal thing if you just hit it, right? Just normal enter. But if you push enter and hold it, it'll act as control, right? So now you have symmetry, right? You remap your caps lock to control and then your return using this. It's really super convenient. it's really great. You get really used to having it there, and obviously if you use Emacs, you're probably using control a lot. And so I went about trying to figure out how to configure AutoHotkey to do this same thing. And I found 2 blog posts or 2 question posts on the forum trying to do that for something else. I couldn't do it. It's not, hopefully it says more about me than AutoHotkey. But after 6 hours, I just kind of said, well, I need to just find a different key, or maybe because I already don't, have enough time to do this, I could organize all Emacs on Windows users and see if they're interested in having this feature of having return key act as control when held. And I thought, all we got to do is just organize all the Emacs on Windows users in the world. We can hire the AutoHotkey developer, right, to add this. And I kind of said that jokingly, and then I thought, well, all creativity is an extended form of joke, so this could be a really good thing.
Hang
And,
on.
I
I might have something actually, because I used to have some AutoHotkey things that would use, like, if you press it for longer, it would issue a different keystrokes. And I already use AutoHotkey to make my caps lock control. So you're right. Enter does look like a plausible thing to turn into control key if it's held down. I might be able to figure something out.
Yeah.
Doesn't look scary.
Let me look. Let me find those links.
I really like AutoHotkey though, so it's one of the saving graces.
AutoHotkey is an excuse for every Emacs Lisp programmer to fall in love with the Windows platform, because if anybody knew that there was a little interpreter that you could control everything to do with input on Windows using this, AutoHotkey, they'd probably have a lot of fun and obviously be productive.
Now you got me thinking.
I'm going to look for those links right now.
Where did I find that?
Here's a couple of links. It seems similar. I don't know. I reading about AutoHotkey, I kind of feel like if it's raw and powerful, and if you've already mastered it, it would be really simple. But that's on the radar. I think it's totally worth pursuing. But it's beyond me, which is not saying much. But I wanted to share that. Yeah, there's also the Emacs everywhere for AutoHotkey, and I was kind of thinking about that when you're looking at your yet another snippet for doing completions and stuff. And if you look at Emacs everywhere, they have a different approach, but it's, first of all, there's Emacs everywhere, right? Which, if you haven't visited that, you ought to.
I did not know about it, so I am checking it out now.
Yeah. Because if you're on OS 10, most of the built-in Emacs key bindings are in the OS 10 text controls. So that's another thing. My buddy was I don't know. He seemed a little bit upset when he learned that he really enjoyed all those Emacs bindings on OS 10. But nonetheless, yeah, Emacs everywhere is really nice, and you look at that and go, if you're interested in the 2-line expansions and stuff, just set them up in AutoHotkey and just have them everywhere, which that could be nice.
Yeah, I
Definitely
thought
interesting.
about that. I have a lot of kind of basic expansions already defined in AutoHotkey, but I'm really interested in snippets, fields, and transformations, and also
Yeah.
its ability to transform things using Emacs Lisp. So I mean, I can kind of do a bit of that in AutoHotkey, but or Emacs of
Yeah.
course is something else.
Yeah. See, I really wish that we're in a situation where we needed to support like 20 plus users, where we needed to use Yas and like that Emacs widget library to just like deploy apps, like rather than have to go through the whole, dev cycle or even like the single page apps and stuff. It'd be interesting. Yeah. Thanks for listening to my story about organizing all Emacs Windows users, because now I've totally talked myself out of it. Unless someone here is really interested, that would be great. There's definitely this belief system though that no Emacs users are on Windows, which, as evidenced by Ben Simon's blog, right, and your blog, and Sasha's blog, and John Kitchen's blog. John Kitchen he posts a lot of org solutions. He's always posting stuff in org, and he recently, Sasha maybe blogged about this. He ran his whole class, one of his recent classes, all through org mode, including like I think doing all the quizzes and everything, and saving the results and storing them somewhere and processing them and everything. So he's being highly productive, which is great.
I found a thing that might be relevant to the AutoHotkey hold versus press distinction. So you might be able to map different events, different key bindings. I'll dig into that a bit later. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird using Emacs in Windows. You kind of feel that it is a second-class citizen. I'm missing a lot of the tools, but I find that if I have a virtual machine using Vagrant and I have Cygwin, then between the two of those, I can usually get everything I wanted sorted out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. I'll share with you guys though. I think I put it in my config. I've made a decision to primarily stick with the W32 Emacs release and then all the easy WinPort stuff, because I believe, could be wrong, but I believe that it's more likely that 100% Windows users would like actually download Emacs Win32, download some zip files from the easy WinPorts and like just run it. And I feel like asking them to install Vagrant and open up a terminal or whatever, it's just not going to happen. So that's the reason why when I set it up, I specifically tried to set it up so that if somebody asks, I'm like, here you go. It's Windows, no surprises, and so we'll see how that goes.
Which one is that one? And is there an Emacs 24.4 for it? Because I've been trying various binaries of Emacs 24.4, and sometimes maybe my memory use gets so big that it just crashes on me or whatever. So I am looking around for Emacs versions that I can try.
Yeah, it's the 24.432 right from GNU.
Oh, okay. So I've tried that one, and I've managed to make it crash. So maybe I should just try not loading a gazillion modules into it.
Maybe. See, now, is everybody here Git users? Everybody on Git?
I mean, I prefer Mercurial, but I use Git also.
So you know that git bisect command? Is it bisect?
Yeah.
Yeah,
At least
git bisect command.
there is a git bisect if
So,
that's what you're
like,
thinking of.
yeah, so I'm waiting for someone to implement an intelligent bisect for our init files when we break stuff, because I'm doing it by hand, and I think it deserves automation at this point, because you mysteriously break stuff, especially if you're doing literate stuff, and it's I think it deserves its own package at this point.
It kind of makes sense.
Just a thought.
I'm surprised no one's just gone and done it yet.
Yeah.
There's some sort of like dash debug in it. I'm not entirely sure what it does, but there's something related to debugging your init file that is like a command line option, I think.
That startup will let's put it in debug mode. Boots up. Yeah, that's so here's a random topic. So if you ever really like, see, again, I unintentionally, I'm just telling stories I've now told at work all day today, as partially to educate and partially just to inundate my coworkers, because I was asking for help about like something to do with my keyboard on Windows, and eventually one of the more vocal folks said, well, why would you want to do that? And I said, I'm so glad you asked. Do you really want to know why? And they're like, well, we want to know. And I said, you're asking, you really want to know, because I'll tell you something. I've got 5 pages of keyboard mapping philosophy that I've written down, and I'll tell you, man, people are not dying to hear that. At which point they said, I don't want to know, and I just kind of laughed. But it's funny to talk about keyboard mapping philosophy. I think Jia Li is pretty. He has many posts about it. His whole approach, my whole approach, which I'm pretty happy with, is just based on pretty primitive 4 zones of access, ease of use. But the one thing that I think I've been pretty happy with, and probably is worth sharing, is my default key bindings. My only customizations live in basically using in the super, the super namespace, and then keycord, right, which magnifies your namespace like by almost 1 trillion, right, combined with prefix keys and stuff, which is great, and that's really great for once you break your init, which is inevitable, which I always do, and being able to start up an Emacs that has the stock key mappings, being able to move around productive is just been really, really great. And the decision I made is I don't ever want to sit on someone else's computer and use an Emacs that I can't type in and be productive at all. And not everybody does it that way. Well, how do you guys do it? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I should do that more often. Go ahead.
Which part? No, I was just going to say thoughts on how to handle key bindings when you break your config. That's kind of the topic, right? How productive do you want to be on a system you didn't personally set up?
Most of the time when I rebind a regular key binding, it's for functionality that's very similar. Maybe it just doesn't do what I mean sort of thing, or it has extra functionality if you control U, like ace jump, zap up the car instead of zap up the car. But I am starting to do more of the key cord plus a key map sort of thing, and that does make a lot of keyboard shortcuts more convenient.
Yeah. I
have this little thing in my config because keycord by default defines symmetric pairs of key bindings. So if you define HT, it will also define TH. I don't know whether this behavior has changed recently, but I changed my changed my defining function so it doesn't do that. That way I can use the perfectly correlate HT without messing up my THs.
You're pretty thoughtful then. I set the key cord activation to like the smallest number it would accept. So if I don't hit them close together, it's just not going to happen.
That's a good idea.
I don't know if that's the right. I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but I said, well, I'll just stick with it. Yeah, it's been keycord is probably a major productivity changer for folks. If you go look at the downloads on Melpa, it's got to be, well, we could just look, right? We're in front of a computer, but it's got to be in the top 10 or so. God, it's just, I find that just insanely productivity enhancing, and I have this belief that everybody's using it. Anybody else? What do you guys think?
Can you guys hear me now? Or
Yes.
still not working?
And I can hear
There
you.
go.
You can? Oh my gosh, okay. Awesome. So what are we talking about? Because I've been in and out like 100 times.
Oh, you poor dear.
You
We've been
said,
talking about the joys of keycord, yeah.
Keycord, okay. Yeah, I've tried it, but I'm not using it as part of my workflow yet, I wouldn't say.
There's only two types of Emacs users: people who use keycord and people who will use it soon.
I believe it. So what are your primary uses for it? Like I know invoking ace jump is a pretty common one. I think that makes a lot of sense. What do you use it for?
I use it conceptually for namespacing. I want to have namespaces open up very easily and not cram everything into super, because I don't want to muck with meta or control. Obviously, I want super. If I had hyper on the keyboard, I'd use that. But I just want namespaces to be just trivially, easily, and available. So I use the prefix binding things to open it up. You know, just do your keycord and do your map just like you would with anything else. And that's been my approach. That's why I really like it.
So I want to have a different solution to this problem, but I haven't wired it up yet. And what I want is pedals. I don't know if anyone's gone down this dark path, but I really want to have like a super pedal and a hyper pedal and like just be an Emacs organ player. I think I'd be very happy that way. I'm serious.
No, it makes sense. I found a foot switch, a three-way foot switch, actually six-way if you play around with it, three-way foot switch at the surplus store, and I rigged it up with an Arduino, which I then changed into a teensy USB to send keyboard shortcuts, keyboard events, because you can do that with an Arduino or a teensy USB, so you can make your own foot pedal for sure. It did come in handy. And for the keycord bindings that I find the most helpful, aside from my ace jump mode, although now I use Control S for that one, when I edit transcripts, I find myself pausing and playing and resuming and skipping forward and backward a lot, and having those shortcuts in the home row makes a big difference for me.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you, but fortunately I kind of actually know already how you do your transcription stuff with that, so
okay, lucky
helpful. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I need to get into the keycord thing more. Earlier when I was unable to speak, I know you guys were talking about Helm, right? And I think I used to use I do vertical mode. I still do now. I'm kind of in the process of switching over to Helm, but I did want to say that there are quite a few more things you can do with Helm. Like, it's a lot better as far as like narrowing down to a set of information and then narrowing it further. Like, it's very easy to put in one word, and I think you have space, and now you've limited it to that set, and you can search inside of it, which is really cool. And you could also kind of have predefined actions, like secondary and tertiary actions you can invoke on the set, and you can like build up sets of things, and you can take an action on a set and then pull that whole set back later with a single command. So there's definitely a lot that it does that's really cool.
That's the stuff I have to get the hang of. I'm still at the,
yeah,
I can use words to filter things, which makes me happy.
Yeah, I bet it looks pretty. Say again?
When do you use the sets?
When do you use the sets? Oh, that's a great question. I mean, so I don't, but somebody who are more capable with it than me might use it, let's say, to like filter down, let's say, a set of files to all files with a certain extension, and then to do like multi-occur across that set of files. That might be a reasonable use case.
Well, I'm starting to really like the Helm alternatives for a lot of common commands. For example, MetaX, if you use Helm MetaX, it shows you the key bindings right there, which is nice because then you don't have to wait until after you run the command in order to see that. And Helm desk bindings is kind of like, it shows you everything right there, and you're just filtering through it instead of having to scroll through this large buffer.
Hey, did everyone just stop talking?
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. Oh, sorry, I was having some bandwidth problems or something, but totally with Sasha on that. I mean, just some of the replacements for built-in commands are a lot more capable, and they're even generally, I think, more capable than the replacements for those existing commands that exist outside of Helm, right? Like smex is a pretty popular replacement for MetaX, and Helm's version is just above and beyond.
Yeah. So these are the bindings I have for keycord. Not a ton, but I feel like they're super. I feel they're super productive. Now, I don't know if you guys read the Wolfram. So the Wolfram blog has a post about the quantified life, which is record everything, right, and use statistics to dig into it, as some of us may already be doing. But there's like the key frequency package where you can store like the calls that you make, right? It'll save it, key freak or something like that. And
yeah, that's the one.
That's is anybody recording and doing research on how they use Emacs?
I'm recording. I'm not doing research. Just collecting.
Yeah.
What about you?
I was saving it and decided it's we'll just let it be an intuitive thing. We'll let the human do some optimizations instead of doing research.
Yeah, I'll look at my most common commands every now and then and just see if there's something that I feel like I'm doing too much of. Obviously, like, beginning Emacs users do way too much, I don't know, next line or something, right? So I just look in there every now and then and try and decide what I can do more efficiently. But I don't have a lot of takeaways from it yet. It's kind of just fun.
Yeah, because like self-insert and key shows up like a trillion times. That's not real helpful, obviously.
You can filter it out probably, I guess. That kind of makes sense.
I would hope so.
I noticed in your keycord config, you might have other things that you don't have, but I think you bind all of the keycord to commands directly. I've started binding them to key maps, which opens up even more key binding opportunities, of course. So get more stuff you can add.
So you're very observant. This is my beginnings, and I very strenuously avoided learning about key maps because I had to start paring down my time investment. And finally when I wanted to set up the laying tool, write good and iSpell bindings, it dawned on me I better learn about these prefix keys and key maps and stuff and actually use them, because that's what everybody does. So all that stuff has to be cut over. But I'll tell you, speaking of key bindings, I hope everybody's using iSpell, write good, and laying tool, because they are super. Is everybody using them?
What's that?
Is everybody using them? iSpell, write good mode, and
I'm not using laying tool.
It's a big Java app, but I don't want to. I don't want to do it myself, and I want the program to do it for me. So, that's allowed me to completely ditch Word, basically, right? Obviously I edit with the quality of an advanced writer and scholar, but sometimes you'd use laying tool, right? So.
Nice. I should check
Also,
that
write
out.
good. You know, I think it's great. And then write good. It finds the weasel words too, which in certain contexts, you actually need weasel words, right? People will not, not everybody's looking for a very dry scientific email and stuff like that. But when you do need that, right, there's write good mode, which has been super. And
Yeah, I've
someone
been
else may
using.
have opinions about. Yeah, I was going to say someone else in this Hangout may have opinions about maybe a different way they may approach their own customizations for write good.
I use Art Bollocks, which is very similar. But it's basically comes with a list of lethal words. You can also add lists of jargon you're trying to avoid, and it does that that passive voice stuff also, which still doesn't stop me from because I write without it on, and then sometimes if I'm feeling good, I will go and turn it on and then watch my like half of my paragraph get highlighted. But it's all these little things will help us write more effectively, right?
If we want to, by someone's definition of more effectively.
And outlines. I'm working on getting the hang of outlines. Fortunately, org at least handles all the technical stuff. It's just the thinking part that I have to deal with.
So what kind of other stuff do folks like to talk about in a Hangout? Is there a lot of init file sharing or just random ponderings, or what's
Yeah,
been the successful approaches?
questions people are trying to figure out, workflow. Ooh, I'm particularly happy about this thing that I hacked together. That sort of stuff.
Nice.
Anything goes.
Nice. Well, has everybody on the call become totally obsessed with literate programming yet?
Well, I'm a big fan. If only because it gives me a place to jot down my notes and copy links in without losing them and without losing the context of the code. So even for the small things that I'm working on, I'll just put my notes in an org file and open up a source block and stick the actual code in there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super nice. Do the tangling and stuff?
Not as much as
Doing
I
org
should.
files to code?
I should do
Yeah.
that more often. I end up, and also because a lot of times I'm copying and pasting things into a web page anyway, so I end up just copying the source block and pasting it into the web page so I can embed it in the widget. But it's it's like there's that, and then there's all the no web stuff that I also should learn how to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. So after doing my hundreds and hundreds of hours learning literate programming for real, I thought I should really read the book, which is a collection of papers, and doing it for real doesn't you don't really need to read much about it, but my org mode hook, I've got the bindings I like for navigating in org files quickly, at least for source blocks. And because I hope I'm not the only insanely lazy one which just didn't learn all the bindings for org mode. But once I learned these bindings to very quickly navigate through source blocks in the document, the productivity just totally took off.
I did not know that you had all these navigation things for going to the next and previous source blocks. I should read the source code for that one.
Yeah. It's you just I did a Coursera course. I did an online Coursera course, and it was an R course, and that's where I found that the approach does really work, because when you combine all of your Emacs knowledge, and then you combine it with your org knowledge, and then you combine it with your source block knowledge, it totally takes off, and the whole notion that you're in your editor, and then when you want to work on source code, you need to unlock a padlock and turn a crank and like go, open this big vault to like work on your code, and it's this painful process to go back and forth. It's not at all. It's so fast. It's so productive. And even just stuff like the display inline images, if you're doing plant UML or oh, not dot, what's it called, graphics and stuff, to just have the document be, well, you don't have to be popping up new windows and all that kind of stuff. You really can do it all there. And I'll tell you a super one. So if we picked out one of them that's the most like understated its importance is org Babel demarcate block. So say you work on some script or program or something, and actually, because we're screen sharing,
Ah,
let's see,
that's
do I
cool.
still have the, yeah. So yeah, so the use case is, say you have some script that like you thought would be a one-off, and well, no, it's like a 25 off, right? It's like real, and it just keeps getting bigger. Just bring it into an R document, put it in a source block, and find a block you want to document, and then org Babel demarcate block. It makes it its own block, document it, life goes on, and it's stuff like that where org's Literate program support, especially with the functions, it's so real world, it's so non-theoretical, it's so pragmatic, iterative, agile, all that kind of stuff. And when you go and read the page that lists the functions, it's just the most like they could only make it more non-obvious like about how valuable it is if they made the font like almost the same color as white, so you couldn't read it, and it's just they're just sitting there. But there's really a lot of really great things. Even just stuff like the org mode users are just super. The org mode, like on the list, everybody says like a lot of people come to use Emacs primarily just because of org. But I'll tell you, so there's a motorcycle club that I'm in, and it's for the Kawasaki Concours, and their motto is you come for the bike, you stay for the people, and that's like org mode people. You come for org mode, you stay for the people. They're sweet and talented people. So like one of the things that happens is when you totally get into org mode, and I set up my editor so that when you edit a source block, so like when I'm in an org document, I don't want to see syntax highlighting because I'm in like English communication mode. So if you look on there, you can see like my source block is dark, right? Because I don't want that information, right? I don't want that code information. I value it, I can read it, but then I go in there and I can see it, and okay, fine. But something happens where, also I set the editor up so that it takes over the window. So I'm like, I just want to edit that block. You could also pop it up in another window, another buffer, whatever you want. You have all those options. And I like to say, I want to be in the code, see the highlight and all that kind of stuff. But what happens is I oftentimes like forget what I'm working on or the language and stuff, because when you have multiple languages, you can just very quickly, right? So like there's a code snippet to add to the mode line, what language you're working on, and also does the source block have a name? And if the you can configure it with obviously with whatever you want, but it's just nice. So when you develop that personal workflow, you can totally tweak it and make it right for how you're using org mode, and then yeah, that's really nice. There's org mode is the literate support is, it's just so insanely flexible and so powerful, and you can pretty much just do anything. That's kind of like everything with Emacs. The big challenge is you have to have, I think you have to have a personal philosophy before you come to it. Otherwise, like, you'll think people are totally insane when they talk about how they spend hours and hours and how they went to an Emacs Hangout and all this kind of stuff, and they're like, don't you get it? I can make it perfect for me. I can make it perfect for me, but the literate stuff in org mode is just super.
Speaking of making it perfect for oneself and things that you can pick up from Emacs Hangouts, I did not know that there was a mode for Stripe highlighting the backgrounds of tables, so I'm glad that you included that in your mode hook.
One of my favorite modes. Gosh, I really love that. I love that mode.
This is why we have to bump into other people's Emacs configurations, right? Because it's one thing that's just it's different when you're just looking at it on the web page and versus somebody talking about stuff and pointing cool stuff out.
Yeah, no, totally. I appreciate your powers of observation. I was somewhat surprised when, you know, I even kind of like the highlight mode, because even your ditto blocks, it's just a tiny bit easier to read, you know. And incidentally, if anybody likes the homage to the Craig Larman book, right, Applying UML and Patterns, I kind of feel like, line 6156 to 6176 just really reveals how flexible you can be with org mode and have the right presentation format for, for people that just want to read text. This is a just fine UML diagram, right? But web page to use an image. It's just really nice to have those options, and it's obviously a personal preference, but if you want to do flat text for folks and still do images and PDF and HTML, it's just such a great option. So am I the only one that likes to have that option? Probably not, but what do you guys? What's your preference?
I read that Bernd Hansen docnorang.ca really long org thing, which showed me the power of using GraphViz and org and PlantUML and all this other cool stuff. So I was like, holy cow! And then I ended up writing this thing to visualize my evil plans from org mode links.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'm all for the fact that you can play around with text and images and make things work somehow.
Yeah. I think the org motto is your life in plain text, which can be nice.
Yeah, so this is the evil plans thing that I was mentioning, and here it actually just it has this map, and on the web it's an image map. I can click on stuff and get to things, yes. And it's cool. I like it.
That's very nice. I liked your post on it too. That's a great post. Yeah, I mean, posts like this really should be like poster children for the power of composable tools and all that kind of stuff. It's nice to be able to do stuff like that.
So much to learn. It's a bit intimidating, but I guess if we can get better at saying, okay, well, here's a smaller thing that you can build that is less intimidating and does not require 400 hours of tweaking. But you can use this to kind of build your skills in this area, and then you can build a little bit more from there and go forward. That can help.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think you and a lot of other folks have posted a lot about how to create an environment where people can succeed at being productive on it, right? Different approaches, all that kind of stuff. It's how I've learned it is that the whole Lisp philosophy or the whole Lisp mindset is you can't build the perfect language for everybody. Just give them the tools, let them create what they need, right? Give them the building blocks, and that's not the Emacs philosophy per se, but it's kind of built in, right? And maybe the Vim philosophy is, hey, we have one configuration, it's really good. Here's how you do it. Just learn that. And I kind of feel like that's the big challenge is, are you using it as an editor with the stock configuration or not? And it can be, it's just so tempting to configure it, right? To do the tweaks and all that kind of stuff. But it probably needs to be a decision.
I wouldn't say
or maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, the Vim culture does feel kind of different. I think people do customize things. They set up their Vim RC with tabs and what. It's not yet as customizable as Emacs is, but again, trends looks like it's going there. But yeah, definitely the approach that Emacs has taken is, it's not going to be by default the perfect editor for you. In fact, I suspect it might even have unreasonable defaults for some things to force you to learn how to deal with customization. But yeah, but then people end up customizing it to be a good editor for them.
Hey, you know, it'd be a good survey to take. I don't know who needs to take this, but I'd love to see a survey of after how many years of usage or configuration or something, some measure of something, did it happen for the first time where people started up Emacs without their init file that they didn't recognize the program, right? You know what I mean? You started up and you're going, what is this? I don't, and then you go, oh God, that's right, that's Emacs. Because that happened to me the other day. It's finally happened where I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know if that's a measure of anything, but once you never.
Is it just are you turning, well, even if I turn off the Chrome, right, and I disable, actually I think I haven't even disabled the splash screen. I just go straight into a org agenda by the time my very long init file finishes. What do you do that makes it so unrecognizable?
It's not I think it's primarily just the color theme and the font. It's and having line num mode turned on and I keep the menu bars, and maybe it's just the font. Just the font. In my config, I wrote about, and I think I simplified it down to like 4 or 5 pages about trying to find the perfect font. The justification, the science, the articles, the links, everything.
I can see why you spent $400 in your config.
Yeah, well, it was totally worth it. Anybody that's like, what is it? I think it's Unicode mode. Let's see. Yeah, Unicode-fonts, the package. Everybody maybe should probably be using that, because if you install Unicode fonts and 4 of the fonts it mentions, you can display a ton of characters. It's very neat. It's very nice. Very, very nice. Is it worth showing? I don't know.
Probably what I should do is we should set up an Emacs chat so that I can interview you at length about all the things that you believe other people should all use. I'm sure we can find a lot of interesting packages and tips that way. Actually, in the 5 minutes or so before I have to wrap up and get going, although I guess other people can stick around if they want to, figuring out what you can do with these Emacs Hangouts, how we can make them even better, maybe how we can deal with the technical issues so I don't spend the first 40 minutes talking to myself.
I joined late. I feel bad I missed that.
It was very. I still have no idea what the recording will do, whether it followed the more interesting branch of other people talking about cool stuff or me being very awkward. But I figure if next time I kind of maybe pick a time when another person is guaranteed to be there and will talk to me a little bit beforehand to make sure that all the tech stuff works. That might be a good idea, at least for improving the next Emacs Hangout. It'll make me blush less.
Yes, that'll be part of your checklist. That's a good thing.
Yeah, but what do you think of the Emacs Hangout so far? I really like the tips you shared.
I like it. I like collaborating. I like learning from other folks, and I just think it's so exciting to hear. I think the cool thing about your Hangout is a definition of success is you can create an environment where people, with some structure and form and plan and stuff, can share their form of creative expression, whatever that is. Whatever they really like, right? Because everybody is very different. The ones you've recorded already, very different focus and interests and all that kind of stuff, and that's the, maybe that's the thing that people enjoy hearing about, the values and the creativity and It would be really interesting for you to do an interview with like really super evil mode users, and just tell us
See what
about it.
it's
What
like,
do they
right?
think, and and all
Yeah.
and I think there's another package. I don't recall the name though, but it's like it makes it be kind of like Phi, where it takes your bindings and it makes it so you don't have to hit the control meta. It doesn't have to hit the control keys.
I think
It
it's
just
called God
deduces it.
mode.
That's
Right?
interesting. There's
Yeah.
interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But that's a thought. That's a thought.
Okay, so if anyone's happens to be a big fan of evil mode or other interesting ways of managing your key bindings, please feel free to reach out. Also, if it would be nice to do these Emacs Hangouts on a monthly basis. It's kind of like a virtual meetup for at least all the rest of us who don't get out to meet a lot of other Emacs people in person. Um, yeah, just comment maybe on the event with some dates and times that work for you in February, and we can sort out an Emacs Hangout around that time.
We'll do that. Thank you.
Any parting thoughts or questions or ideas? Oh. Okay, so for the folks listening in the recording will probably be available on the event page. I've also got a tag on my blog. I really should I should make a mailing list. I think you suggested that as a way for people to find out about upcoming Hangouts. We will get this all sorted out and more organized at some point. Maybe an org file in the GitHub. Anyway, but I very much appreciate people dropping by and sharing their thoughts, and happy Emacs hacking, I guess.
Happy hacking. Have a great evening, folks.
All right, y'all. Bye.
Bye-bye.